Around the time of the Rambam in Egypt, many years ago. There was a couple, recently married, and they didn't know very much about each other. The wife knew that her husband used to be a very poor man, a beggar even, and somehow his luck turned and he became a wealthy businessman. And the husband knew about his wife that she once was married, got divorced, wasn't exactly sure what happened, and this is her second marriage. So they were a very sweet couple, and they got along beautifully together. And the wife had a wonderful tradition. Every day she would make a beautiful meal, and her husband would shut down his business from around 12 o'clock in the afternoon to 2 in the afternoon. He'd come home and share this feast with his wife. Now the wife knew that since her husband had lived such a poor life up until recently, he was scared to spend money on anything, and they lived a very frugal life. Of course, she always had money for whatever she needed and for whatever the home needed, but he himself lived a very simple life. And anytime anybody came asking for money, he gave extremely generously. It happened one day, there was a knock at the door, and there's this poor Jewish beggar who's standing there looking a total wreck. And he says, please, I haven't eaten in days. Please let me in. And the poor guy, he's so embarrassed, he can't even show his face. So he says like this, please, let me in. I haven't eaten in days. Now, of course, the husband, who himself used to be a poor man, he jumps out of his seat. He tells the beggar, please sit here, have my seat. You can have all the food on the table. You can have all the food in the house. And if you need more, I'll go and buy you more. And believe me, this beggar, he finished every morsel of food there was in the house. And the rich man, he gave him a bag of coins, and wished him well, and sent him on his way. He looks at his wife, and he sees that she's not doing well. She looks pale. She looks like she's about to faint. Sister, what's going on? For sure you can't be upset that I gave him all of our food. She said, God forbid. I would never be upset about something like that. And he said, well, why do you look so bad? She said, well, you know that I used to be married, and I got divorced. And I'll tell you a little bit about my ex-husband. He was a very successful businessman, and I had the same thing. I would set the table, make a beautiful meal. He would shut down his business, come home, we would eat together. He had many wonderful traits. But one thing that he was terrible at, and that actually ruined his life and ruined our marriage, was he was a miser. He wouldn't share his money with anyone. And one day there was a knock on the door, and it was a poor Jew, came begging for food. And my husband was sitting there with a whole table of food and a little bit of bread in his mouth. We just started the meal, knock at the door, the beggar says, I want to eat. My husband slams the door in his face, yells at him from the window, don't ever come back here again. I'm sick of you beggars. You're bothering me all the time. I can't stand you anymore. Sure enough, after that, my husband's business dealings started failing left and right. Every deal he made caused him to lose more and more money until we were totally bankrupt, and we even had to sell our house. And at that point, we were out on the street, and my husband said to me, I'm sorry, I have to get a divorce. I can't be with you anymore. And even though I wanted to stay with him, I accepted the divorce, and we parted and went our separate ways. So the husband's looking at his wife, and he says, okay, well, what's the connection here? He said, well, that man was my husband. And the current husband, he looks at his wife and he says, I know. She says, really? How do you know? He said, because I was the beggar that your husband turned away at the door that day.